Today's video dedication is brought to you with thanks from Dan Kirch. This week of deck techs continues with us taking a look over Jodah the Unifier. Jodah is a 5-colour 5/5 commander that gives our legendary creatures, including itself by the way, +X/+X, where X is the number of legendary creatures we control. There's also some card advantage stitched on there. Whenever we cast a legendary spell from our hand, exile cards off the top of the library until we reveal a legendary non-land card with lesser mana value. That card is put straight into play. So Jodah is an incredibly powerful commander that ties buffing your army in with card advantage to grow your army, while spending no extra mana to do so. First thing you should do when you're building any deck is decide what your strategy is, and I decided getting into the red zone was the thing to do with this commander, seeing as how all of our legends are going to be huge. It makes perfect sense. Making use of legends with keywords that are cheap simply because of their low power and toughness is definitely a strategy to make use of here. Rograk is free and will often come down as a 0 mana 4/5 with First Strike, Menace and Trample. We also have the new kobold Rosnacht as well. Just 1 mana for this and it has Battle Cry to further help us with attacks. Then there's Yoshimaru, a mere 1 mana 1/1, but it won't be that small for long. Not only will it enter as a much bigger creature than that, but it will get buffed with plus counters every time you play a legend, of which we have 31 in the deck. Some more low cost legends with excellent abilities include Kari Zev, who has First Strike and Menace but also brings another legendary creature on attack, buffing our entire army in doing so. Killian is a Menace lifelinker, making it difficult to block. We do have a few Menace creatures in this deck. And then there's Minsk, who also brings in a legendary token, meaning that you get 2 legends on 1 card for only 3 mana here. Excellent value. And while we're on the subject of getting more than 1 legend out of our single spells, let's take a look at some more at the top of the curve. Drist enters with a 4/1 legendary cat that will gain more toughness for attacks from Jodah, and can get plus counters when another creature that's bigger than it dies. There's also both Tolsemirs that give us a legendary wolf. Tolsemir Wolfblood also further buffs our Celestia creatures by 2, which does include our commander, so with just Tolsemir Wolfblood and Jodah in play, Jodah is going to be a 9/9. That's easy to curve into, and really easy to pull off because all you need here is your commander and Tolsemir in hand. Then you can start landing some serious damage and threatening commander. Now it can be tricky to get damage through sometimes, which is why I included some Menace creatures in the deck. But we can seriously threaten commander damage on our opponents here too, so making use of the gods Nylea and Thassa will help us get that done. Nylea gives all of our stuff trample, whilst Thassa can give unblockable for only 2 mana. Both of these don't always enter as creatures, but if you do have them in play with your commander, you're only a few pips away from that 5 devotion you need to animate them. Unfortunately nowadays you do need haste in combat based decks to stand any sort of a chance of winning. The format has become faster and faster over the years, and haste really lets you take your opponents by surprise, so Akroma's Memorial will give all of your creatures flying, first strike, vigilance, trample and haste, as well as pro black and red. Lots of relevant keywords on there, not to mention that it is a legendary permanent itself. A couple of legendary creatures give us haste too, one of which is Samut Voice of Dissent. Samut also doubles up as a potential combat trick, or even surprising your opponents with haste just before the turn starts can really hurt them thanks to that flash ability. If they've just played through a turn cycle thinking that they'll have time to react, drop Samut just before your turn, and then pile even more pressure with hasty creatures swinging straight in their direction. And speaking of piling on the pressure, I've also included Maelstrom Wanderer. The haste is really useful here, but you also get free spells when you cast it too. Sometimes you'll get decent free spells, sometimes you'll whiff, but there's hardly ever a downside to playing Wanderer. Now this is all well and good, we've got the haste, we've got the evasion, but what happens if we can't keep our creatures in play? Well, we've got that covered here too. In this section we can make use of the brand new Ratadrabik commander, which I will be revealing a video about this week, so stay tuned for that one. Anyway, this will bring back our legendaries that died to spot removal and board wipes as 2/2 zombies, and it is noteworthy that it doesn't exile them, so they can still be resurrected, but we'll go more into that later. The fact that they enter as mere 2/2s doesn't matter because you likely get Jodah back into play too during that board wipe, because Ratadrabik does bring your commander back too, even if it's gone into the command zone thanks to it being a death trigger, meaning the 2/2 zombies are actually going to be way bigger and also have vigilance now to boot. But that's not the only protection we've got. Gerard Weatherlight Hero will bring back all of our artifacts and creatures that died this turn when Gerard dies, meaning that your opponents have to deal with Gerard before hitting the reset button. If you have Ratadrabik in play upon said board wipe, then you'll actually get a token copy of Gerard ready to use again. So there's no worries if you end up with both of them in play at once, it just makes you even more resilient. Of course, Avacyn is one of the best ways to protect your board in Commander. Indestructible on everything gives your opponents very little options to deal with your stuff. Plus it's a massive Vigilance Angel with evasion, so if you can't deal with it, it's likely it's going to crack you for a ton. A more mana intensive means of recursion is Kethis the Hidden Hand. If there are some legends we're eager to get back into play after some mass discard, mill or board wipe, then Kethis will likely let us do that. There's no mana doublers in here, so we can't really abuse Kethis. If you do want to lean more this way, then maybe a Mirari's Wake or Zendikar Resurgence could be included. Now I did mention previously that there is some mass reanimation in the deck, and the card I was referring to is Primeval's Glorious Rebirth. It's noteworthy that you do have to control a legendary creature already to play this, which does make it more difficult, but it's a reasonably costed one-sided mass reanimation spell, so it's definitely worth an include in here. Beginning to wrap up this video now, and the penultimate section is redundancy. We obviously get huge buffs from our commander and nothing's going to top that, but we do have some other permanents that help boost our creature's power and toughness. The first of which being Arvad the Cursed. A +2 buff on our legendaries is a very big boost, and Arvad even has a couple of useful keywords in lifelink to give us massive amounts of life, and Death Touch to help push the damage through. Then there's also Hero's Podium, which doubles up as both card advantage and an anthem effect for our creatures, as well as being a legendary permanent itself. Worth mentioning that the same can be said for the Great Henge, which is also in the deck, and similar to Arvad, we get ourselves a +2 buff from the enchantment Day of Destiny, also a legendary permanent. Ending this video on card advantage today, some of which is fairly generic in Sylvan Library, Windfall and Wheel of Fortune, but we do have some more interesting on-theme ways of gaining card advantage. A Seeker being played as a prismatic bridge for one. Typically bridge is the type of card that you want to build the whole deck around, but I actually don't mind which legend we flip into for free here, because it's not like we're going to get a 1 mana 1/1. More likely it'll be a 1 mana 5/5 and above. Reki History of Kamigawa is another decent deck in its own right, and does cantrip all of the creatures we want to cast anyway. Noteworthy that Jodah does have you cast legends that you find off the top of the deck, so those additional spells will trigger the card draw from Reki. We have both Sisseys in the deck too, one for tutoring into hand, and one puts them straight onto the board. Weatherlight Captain should be able to tutor for anything as soon as it hits play because it's at least a 7/7 when it's played alongside Jodah, meaning you can already grab almost any creature out of the deck with no further setup required. Kavori God of Kinship will often enter as a 4 mana 6/6 before any further buffs, and can swing in with Vigilance before tapping, revealing the top 6 cards and giving you a legend for your troubles. If we're going into the red zone anyway, we might as well drop a huge indestructible squirrel into play. Toski draws us a card every time a creature of ours deals combat damage, and it'd be foolish not to include Prime Speaker Zagana into a deck that cares about legendaries and wants to draw cards based on vast amounts of power. It's noteworthy that if you want to build this commander, you might also want to buy yourself a copy of the Mardu Legends Tribal Precon that releases alongside Dominaria United. Kadric Soulkindler, Dehana and Shanid are excellent in Mardu or Wooburg Legend Tribal decks such as this. Unfortunately, I'm not sure if they'll actually be included on Magic Online because Wizards doesn't support Magic Online like it should, so I haven't actually included them here in the deck list, but if they're available on Magic Online then at least a couple of these will be going in there. So there we are. How do you like this deck? Is there anything you'll be including in your list that I haven't mentioned here? Be sure to leave these suggestions in the comments. Massive thank you to the patrons for so consistently supporting the channel, even through these difficult financial times. It really doesn't go unnoticed and I very, very much appreciate it. I'm tribalkai. Thank you for watching.